Hello, I am Dr. Julie H. Sullivan, President and CEO of the International Foundation for Education and Self-Help, Ifesh. The foundation was founded by my late father, the Reverend Dr. Leon Howard Sullivan, author of the Sullivan Principles. My late father believed that while charity lasts only as long as public sentiment is sympathetic to the rights of the poor, sustainable development engages the poor in the process of their own development. And that philosophy underpins all of our community-driven work in the field. The mission of Ifesh is to support African nations in their efforts to eradicate poverty, disease, and inequity through self-help partnership programs in 11 sub-Saharan African countries. Our vision is an Africa where everyone reaches their full potential through access to quality education, quality health, and good governance. Since 1981, Ifesh has impacted more than 7.2 million people, including 180,000 African teachers and the placement of more than 1,000 American volunteers to work with their counterparts in the improvement of the quality of education for children, as well as integrating HIV/AIDS awareness into primary and secondary school curriculum. The work of Ifesh supports the efforts of the 8 UN Millennium Development Goals, particularly the eradication of extreme poverty and hunger, achieving universal primary education, combating HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other diseases, and promoting gender equality and empowerment of women. In the Congo, we have also reintegrated 1,000 former child soldiers into their communities. We are working in village communities to combat child labor and addressing HIV/AIDS through health awareness, health training, and the reduction of mother-to-child transmission of HIV/AIDS. Many, if not most, of the beneficiaries of Ifesh projects indeed have been women and young girls who have borne the brunt of the repercussions of poverty in poor nations. Through our International Educators for Africa program, we have addressed gender equity by training thousands of teachers to improve access to education for young girls. And on a global scale, we have been instrumental in increasing primary enrollment rates among both boys and girls. Sustainable development entails training individuals to prioritize workable, viable solutions for the needs of their countries and their communities. Remember, not a hand out, but a hand up. We at Ifesh believe that this begins and ends with education. According to statistics from UNICEF, released in 2007, and as reported by the New York Times, the number of deaths of young children under the age of 5 around the world has fallen to below 10 million a year. While this is a marked achievement for most of the developing world, including Latin America, the Caribbean, as well as in Central and Eastern Europe, East Asia, and the Pacific, high rates of child mortality persist in West and Central Africa, where more than 150 of every 1,000 children born will die before the age of 5. Regrettably, the world still does not embrace the African child as it embraces the rest of the world's children. The challenge is for donor communities, and that means all of us, to work with governments to strengthen the capacity of the poor, particularly women and mothers, to provide for the health and well-being of their children through functional literacy programs, the building of schools, job creation, and health awareness. Ifesh continues to work within both the public and private sector with prominent support from USAID and a host of other donors, including the World Bank, the World Cocoa Foundation, and other donors including Chevron, Shell, Hershey, General Motors, Daimler Chrysler, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Mars Chocolate Company, and other donors in the support of community-driven projects that support vulnerable populations. Every stakeholder has a voice in the design and implementation of projects, from a mother who is living in a rural village and who is a participant in a functional literacy class, to the ministers of education and health, to the primary and secondary school teachers and school administrators and principals and policymakers. By doing so, Africans possess ownership of their own development efforts. We believe that by engaging with diverse donor communities in Africa, we can and will demonstrate that sustainable change can occur. As quoted by my late father in his book, Philosophy of a Giant, published in 1973, The greatest crisis facing our nation, and indeed the world, is a crisis of the human spirit, man's relationship with God. We believe that if apathy toward African nations and its plight can be turned around and steered toward faith and hope, sustainable change will occur. There is an African proverb that says, if you want to get there quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Let's move together toward the attainment of the UN Millennium Development Goals of 2015. Let's make it happen. Let's keep the promise. Thank you so very much.